In the 1st century BC, land known to the Romans as Gaul stretched from the Alps to the Atlantic, a vast expanse of fertile plains and dense forests. It was a land of warriors, poets, and druids, but it was not a unified kingdom. Instead, it was a mosaic of hundreds of fiercely independent tribes, bound by a shared culture, but separated by old rivalries and deep-seated animosities. For decades, the Romans had been slowly encroaching on these lands, but with the appointment of Gaius Julius Caesar as governor of Cisalpine Gaul, Transalpine Gaul, and Illyricum, the pace of conquest accelerated dramatically. Caesar, a brilliant and ambitious general, saw Gaul not just as a frontier, but as a stage for his own political glory and a source of immeasurable wealth. Caesar expertly exploited the internal divisions of the Gauls, pitting one tribe against another, and often aligning with so-called friendly chieftains to further his own agenda. For years, the Gauls fought each other more often than they fought the Romans. It seemed their fate was to be absorbed, one by one, into the Roman Empire. But from the powerful Arverni tribe, a new voice emerged. Vercingetorix, a nobleman whose own father had been executed for daring to seek kingship, recognized a terrible truth: divided, they would all fall. He saw a different future, one where the tribes of Gaul would stand as one. Initially, the elders of his own tribe, fearing Roman retribution, cast Vercingetorix out. But his vision was too powerful to be silent. Vercingetorix rallied a small band of loyal followers and set out on a dangerous mission to unite the tribes of Gaul. He traveled tirelessly, from the Sequani in the east to the Carnutes in the west, his message resonating with a people wearies of Roman subjugation. He wasn't just a warrior, he was a master orator, painting a picture of a free, sovereign Gaul. One by one, the tribes swore their allegiance to Vercingetorix. He was elected commander-in-chief of a vast, unprecedented coalition, a great king of warriors, as his name translates. He immediately imposed harsh discipline, taking hostages to ensure loyalty and punishing deserters with fire and death. He knew that this alliance, a fragile creation of hope and desperation, needed to be held together by an iron will. The rebellion began with a swift and brutal massacre of Roman citizens at Sinope. Vercingetorix's strategy was simple yet brilliant: avoid direct, large-scale battles where Roman discipline would triumph. Instead, he would use a devastating scorched earth policy. He ordered the burning of towns, villages, and crops, denying the Roman legions the very sustenance they needed to survive in the coming winter. The Gauls watched as their own homes and livelihoods went up in flames, a heartbreaking sacrifice for the sake of freedom. This tactic, born of Vercingetorix's genius, left Caesar's legions on the brink of starvation. Vercingetorix's strategy faced its greatest test in the town of Avaricum. The town's inhabitants, pleading for their magnificent city to be spared, convinced Vercingetorix to break his own rule. He relented and prepared for its defense. But Caesar, facing a desperate supply crisis, saw Avaricum as his salvation. He laid a brutal siege. After a grueling 27-day siege, the Romans broke through. They showed no mercy. Of the 40,000 inhabitants, only a handful survived the slaughter. Vercingetorix was blamed by some of his own people for the disaster, but with powerful oratory, he renewed their will to fight. The Gauls' moment of glory arrived at the Battle of Gergovia. Vercingetorix, using the natural defenses of the hilltop fortress, repelled Caesar's legions. the Romans were forced to retreat in disorder, suffering heavy losses. It was a stunning and rare defeat for Caesar, a humiliation that echoed across the Roman world. Vercingetorix was hailed as a hero, a man who had humbled the seemingly invincible conqueror. Emboldened by this victory, Vercingetorix decided to take the offensive. He attacked a Roman supply train, but Caesar's swift response and the superior Roman cavalry turned the tide. Vercingetorix was forced to retreat, and in a fateful decision, he chose to seek refuge in the heavily fortified hill fort of Alesia. The name Alesia would forever be synonymous with this final act of the Gallic Wars. Caesar, with his tactical genius, constructed a feat of engineering that remains astonishing to this day. He built 2 concentric rings of fortifications, an inner wall to trap the Gauls inside, and a massive outer wall to protect his army from the coming Gallic relief forces. Trapped with his 80,000 warriors and thousands of civilians, Vercingetorix knew he was in a race against time and starvation. He sent out his cavalry at night to summon every available Gallic warrior from the free tribes. As the siege wore on, food became scarce. In a harrowing and desperate act, Vercingetorix ordered the expulsion of all non-combatants, the women, children, and elderly. The Roman legions, on Caesar's command, refused their passage, leaving them to starve and freeze in the desolate no-man's land between the 2 armies. It was an act of psychological warfare that broke the spirit of many. Finally, the Gallic relief army, a massive host of over 250,000 warriors, arrived. They attacked the Roman outer wall with unparalleled ferocity, but Caesar's fortifications held. For days, battles raged on both sides of the Roman walls, a symphony of steel and courage. Vercingetorix launched an attack from within Alesia, but it was too late. The relief army was crushed, and with their final hope gone, the Gauls in Alesia were defeated. Knowing that any further resistance was futile and would only lead to a complete massacre, Vercingetorix made a final decision that would forever cement his legacy. He chose to surrender alone, sacrificing himself to save his people. He rode out of the fortress, magnificent and alone on his warhorse, approaching Caesar's camp. Without dismounting, he circled the Roman general, a final defiant gesture. Then, with a fierce clang, he hurled his sword and spear to the ground at Caesar's feet, his head held high. This was no surrender of a defeated man, but the final, proud act of a king who, even in loss, would not be humbled. Vercingetorix was held captive for 6 years, a living trophy for Caesar's triumph. He was paraded through the streets of Rome in chains, a tragic spectacle for the cheering crowds, before being ritually executed in a dungeon. His life ended not on the battlefield, but as a sacrifice to Roman glory. The freedom Vercingetorix had fought so valiantly for was ultimately lost, but in his final stand, he gave his people something more enduring: their honor. He became a timeless symbol of resistance, and centuries later, his story was rediscovered and embraced by the French as a founding myth, a reminder that a people's spirit, even in defeat, can never be fully conquered. The epic of Vercingetorix is a somber tale, not of a final triumph, but of enduring courage, a testament to one man who dared to challenge the greatest empire on earth for the sake of his homeland.
Who are you, the Roman said, that you stand so tall and so proud? Only a slave in a wolfskin dress, lost in a faceless crowd. In a forest deep or a barren field, a warrior still has pride. And ours is long and fierce, my lord, as fierce as yours inside. And so he fought, and so he fought, the hero of our lands. But now the silence weeps o'er the fields and falls through